Hello and welcome back. Remember all the plans I previously made in the other video that you guys probably didn't watch? Well, throw all that junk out of the window because we're doing something totally different. But before we talk about all those plans and get into that, first we need to add some additional hardware to the Hakatosh server. I bought this HBA LSI card off of Amazon, so this should allow me to use more than just 4 SATA ports. This thing can handle up to 8, as well as this hot swap drive bay. And I have 3 of these that we're going to be adding to the Hakatosh server. So with this, I probably won't fill it out with hard drives, but it will look even as compared to before, because before I was going to have 1 of these and then 3 or 2 fans, which kind of would have looked ridiculous. But now it should look pretty cool, especially when I start adding hard drives to it, and it gets filled out in all the blinky lights, which everyone likes, of course. Anyway, without any further waiting, let's go ahead and jump right on in. Alright, so this is an LSI SAS9211-8I SAS card. And this is a PCI Express 8x PCB. And we're basically going to use this to allow me to plug in 8 hard drives, or 4 in each one of these ports, to this thing, and this will help expand it. So if you remember from the previous video, I have a total of 8 SATA 3 6 gigabit per second ports on here. So I'm going to need this if I want to use or have the capability to have 6 gigabit per second SATA 3 connections from my SATA drives. Now this thing also comes with a small bracket if you have a small form factor case or a 2U or 1U or whatever kind of U server chassis, and of course it also comes with the tall one, which in this case I get to use. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and slide this thing right on in here into my PCI Express 16 slot. And then eventually we'll run some cables to get this thing plugged into the hard drives. Alright, and instead of using the onboard VGA graphics, I am going to be using this graphics card so I can get DisplayPort out to my monitors, because my monitors are too new to support VGA, and I'm not going to do adapters on adapters on adapters for days just to have visual aid if I need it. Alright, so what we're going to go ahead and do is remove this so that we have access to the SATA cables more easily, as well as running cables for some better cable management later on, which we're going to need to kind of do since we have to use SAS cables, SAS to SATA cables, to actually plug in the hard drive. Alright, so this thing kind of gets stuck in here a little bit because it's the perfect size, and I am somehow pinned down. Oh, the fan's actually stuck. The fan was holding it in. So I don't remember if you guys saw from last video, but I did add this in here just because I have nothing else to do with it. This 80mm fan from Be Quiet is hopefully helping some airflow, but it's sort of insignificant. Alright, next up is removing all the existing SATA cables out of here because we don't need this. And so one thing I actually found out is that some of these SATA ports are actually SATA 2 instead of SATA 3. I think there's only 4 SATA 3 ports, which is kind of a shame because it would be nice if they would have colored them all the same for the SATA 2 and the SATA 3 ports. Alright, so unfortunately I'm going to have to remove all of these cables to kind of make room for myself, and also remove all of the SSDs and hard drives that are in here. So this thing is actually going to become the new Transcencia server. And if you don't remember, Transcencia is actually the unRAID server that's being hosted elsewhere. So I'll be taking out all those hard drives from there and the USB thumb drive and exchanging it for this one and sticking it in here. So hopefully that all works out without a hitch. That's something that we're going to have to kind of figure out on the fly because I've never done that before. Alright, so real quick, I just have to remove these screws here to actually remove these drive bays. And then once these are removed, I can add in the new hot swap drive bays. Alright, so before I actually remove the drive caddies, I do have to remove all my Western Digital black drives because I might drop something or bang these around and I don't want to lose any data. Well, actually I'm probably going to overwrite these, but just in case, I don't want to break these in any way or form. Alright, so I'm pretty sure, I always have trouble removing these things, but I'm pretty sure that you just have to simply push down on these tabs here simultaneously. There's 3 of them, and then slowly pull it out. And you should be good to go. I appear to be stuck on something. I have no idea what it is, but sweet. Alright, so that's the first one. And now we're just going to remove the other 2, and we should be done with this part. Alright, so I want to open one of these with you guys because I've never used one before or even opened one myself. I didn't even do that much research, but this is a internal SATA hot swap drive bay. It supports SAS. For those of you that are interested in probably getting one of these on your own, as you can see on the picture here, it does support 4 SATA drives. Soft foam, which is always great to see. I'm pretty sure this thing was actually opened before because the tape was already damaged. We got a little manual in here, something we're totally not going to look at. Now let's actually take a look at the thing that we actually care about. So this is the hot swap drive bay itself. It's got like an aluminum frame. It already comes with a fan. We're not going to use this because this is probably some cheapo fan. And the drive caddies itself are a very cheap plastic feeling material, and it's not toolless. Not a big deal. I mean, we can still work with this, but not exactly what I think of or envision when I imagine hot swap. But nonetheless, pretty quick to release and insert. And it looks like here actually is where the LED indicator lights are for drive activity, which would be pretty cool. So one last thing, they actually do come with 4 SATA cables, which is pretty nice to see, even though we don't need these and I probably won't use them, and they seem pretty long. If I had to guess, this is maybe about 2 feet of cable, which is pretty ridiculous. Ridiculously awesome, that is. Alright, so this thing's gonna be so cool when it's done. I'm really excited to get these things installed because, I don't know, I think all the blinking lights are gonna look really sweet, especially when it gets filled out with hard drives in the future. But until then, I'm just gonna have to settle with not having so many drives. Okay, so we're just gonna move these cables out of the way so we can have some space here. And now these things should slide right on in, I think, or maybe not. So maybe we do actually need those drive bays installed because I don't know if you guys can tell, but there's actually quite a bit of space. I can fit almost my entire hand between this gap here. So I guess back to the drawing board. So in the instructions here, you can clearly see that this bracket is overlapping this front bezel piece here. Now that little notch right about there is what this notch is right here. So clearly this is supposed to overlap that bracket. Well, if we try to insert this, the brackets are installed according to the instructions. I get a lot of resistance, not a big deal, but as you can clearly see, this is actually lifted up. And it's on top of this bracket, so it won't let me push it in any further. Oh, maybe it will. Well, now I'm stuck for sure, because that notch is grabbing onto the top of the computer case, and I can't push it any further in. Alright, so what I've done is swapped around the brackets, but now the problem is this notch, once I manage to get this sliding in here, is going to catch. Wow, this thing is not going in. The problem is this notch is probably going to catch on this metal piece here as I try to bring it out. And actually, I can't force it in. I'm using quite a bit of force, and it's not going anywhere. So giving it a lot of force is not really going to help. So look at this. I mean, this notch is so well above or high above all this metal here that it's not going in at all. Now, I think if I remove the bottom brackets, I can probably get this in. Okay, so what I've done is I removed the bottom brackets, and now I've flipped these back in the way they're supposed to go according to the directions. And I'm getting a little resistance, but it seems to go in almost all the way. There we go. Now it is definitely in. So that's pretty snug, and I don't think that's going to go anywhere. Let's actually see if this door closes. So what I discovered before is I wasn't able to close this door. And now it looks like it closes pretty much all the way. And that looks like it's got a pretty good seal, so the filter in front will be able to do its job pretty effectively. Now what we're going to do is we're not going to install the brackets on either the bottom pieces. On the top, it seems to fit pretty well, even though there's only 2 brackets on the top. So the EVGA power supply that I have for this build only has 2 Molex power cables. So what I have to do is actually get a SATA to Molex adapter in order to utilize this hot swap drive bay. The hot swap drive bay itself has male connectors, and this is a female adapter. There'll be a link in the video description below to find these, and if we go ahead and insert these in here, wow, that is nice and tight, just the way I like it. All that's left to do is slide these big black hot swap drive bays in the last 2 slots, and this thing will be filled up just like your mom. All right. And the somewhat boring but not really boring part, plugging in cables. So the EVGA power supply actually does come with 4 Molex power cables or whatever connectors, but they are a little too far apart. You could definitely get them in or to make them reach if you tried hard enough, but I'm not gonna do that because they are a pain in the ass to remove should you need in the future. And now we're gonna plug in our SATA adapters, and that'll be good for power, and we will figure out how to run the SATA connectors itself for data here in a moment. Alright, so I'm just going to move all this garbage out of the way in the meantime, I think, so we don't need it. Clean up a little bit. The all-important cable, these are mini SAS to SATA. So it's a SAS cable that will plug into the HBA card, and then these are SATA connectors on the opposite end. And we have 2 of these. A link in the video description will be provided should you need, if you do something similar on your own. So we are going to plug in this to all 4 ports. I think I'll probably do it over here. Might look a little cleaner. Yeah, I'll do it on this side. Now, if you remember from earlier, this HBA card does support exactly 8 hard drives, which is the exact number I need because I am, in fact, going to use some of the ports on this motherboard. Now, there may be some of you out there that are wondering if this bar will actually fit with the hot swap drive bays, and it does. Now, it is very tight, and it was somewhat difficult to get it in there, but I did manage, and it's not pushing down anything. There's nothing rubbing up against it. It's not pushing anything like up against the fans that are attached to the hot swap drive bays. It just fits perfectly. Now, if you were trying to do something with a radiator, you could probably do it. It would be a very tight squeeze. Maybe if you had a single CPU system, it would work more better. And even in this, you could probably get away with it, but however, there's barely enough clearance here with this Noctua heatsink here. So if this was like a pump and this was another pump right over the CPU, or maybe just a water block on each of those, it would probably work. But that remains to be seen because that's not something we're going to explore in this video. Okay, so now our server's pretty much squared away. It's got everything plugged in, I believe, and what we're going to do now is the crazy part. We're going to take out all of the hard drives from Transcencia and transfer those over to Hakatosh. Now, I'm going to keep it with the name of Hakatosh because I like that. I think it's pretty neat and unique. So, and also in the future, if I really want to, I probably will never do this again, but if I really want to, I can create another Hakatosh VM within the operating system. So let's go ahead and get those drives unplugged, or actually the server turned off and then unplugged, and we will put those into the server and see what happens. I've never just taken out an unRAID USB stick and stuck it in another system with totally new hardware ever before. What we're going to do today, and I'm being told, or I've read at least, that you should at least try and remember where your parity drives are, so that way you don't lose all of your data. So this is actually pretty risky, and I feel kind of nervous doing it because I don't even have a backup of any of my data, so this could get pretty bad. But I do have a picture of this and on video should I need to look at it later. Alright, so Transcencia is powered off, so we're just going to remove the hard drives and get them transferred over. The fun part of any build. Fun fact, there's always money in the server stand, or in this case, server rack. All of the hard drives have some pennies in them to hold the drives in place so they don't slide out of the SATA ports, because, as you may recall, I don't actually have the screws that are for that server. Oh, the infinite fun you have with hard drives and servers and stuff. And what? That's actually not long enough and doesn't fit. It fits there. Interesting. Fun, fun, fun. So I want to try and get these in somewhat of the correct order. Just really for my sake. And by correct order, I mean install 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way to the right or left. And I almost forgot about my Intel SSD cache drives that I'm going to use. So we're going to slide these all the way in the far left. Hopefully I remember that as well. And I think we're good for drives for now. I may install other ones later, but I'm not entirely sure. It's probably a little hard to tell from this angle, but I'm actually removing the previous unRAID install on this SanDisk USB thumb drive and installing this USB thumb drive from Transcencia into Hakatosh. Now Hakatosh, which is the server you're currently looking at, will forever become the new Transcencia, and Transcencia will, and Hakatosh will become Transcencia in the future, as if that's not confusing. Before we go any further with this build, I fully expect it to boot up, give me a display, or let's boot into unRAID hopefully, and I'll be able to see all of the hard drives. So that's our main goal right now. And surprisingly, the stock fans that come with the hot swap drive bays are actually very quiet, a lot more quiet than I thought. In fact, I think they're more quiet than the fans that come with the Noctua heatsinks. So this thing isn't going to have networking when it comes up, but all I just hope to see is that I can in fact get into unRAID, or it boots into unRAID. Take a guess here. I think it's trying to boot to hard drive. I hear a hard drive clicking, and that would suggest to me that it is in fact trying to boot to it. So I just did Control-Alt-Delete, see if I could get back into the BIOS. Okay, so I managed to get in the BIOS. I'm not entirely sure what happened. This graphics card may be bad, so I swapped it out with my GTX 1050. The 1050 is not supposed to be in this server, which I'd really hate to leave it in there, and I'd really hate to buy another one, but I may have to do that because that's the only real way to confirm that this is working at this time. And yeah, so it's up and operational. I hope it stays that way, and of course it's already set to boot to unRAID. So now we're just gonna reboot the server, and hopefully I don't get any more errors and it boots straight into unRAID itself. Did eventually boot into unRAID. It was pretty camera shy. I have no idea what was going on. I reset it a few times. unRAID complained about some memory errors. However, it seemed to come up perfectly fine. So I think I need to probably run some mem test. The mem test built into unRAID to make sure I don't have any problems with my RAM. I doubt I do, but things are a little fishy right now. So I'm going to play with that off camera, and I guess we'll see where we get. Alright, let's get this thing put into the rack so we can see what it can do. Okay, so I know it's probably a little difficult for you guys to tell, but I just booted up unRAID. I just managed to get to it. Had to go directly to it via its IP address, which is okay, but it auto-filled out the hard drives in the same order as they were before. So if you see here, or if you can see here on the left, here are the hard drive model numbers, and they automatically populated, which is pretty awesome. Now, you'll see that disk 9 and disk 10 are also here, but then they're missing here. I did that on purpose because I actually don't want these disks anymore. There's nothing on them anyway, so I'm not afraid to lose any data that may or may not have been there. So we're just going to go ahead and start this up, and I think we're good. I don't think there's anything else I have to do. It started up, still missing the same two disks. Not seeing any errors. I don't see any errors here listed by unRAID. Check my VMs. Those seem to be working. Let's see. I guess Docker. Plex is still here. We can check to see if Plex is actually working. This might need a reconfiguration, because probably looking for an IP address that doesn't exist anymore. So that's okay. I'll figure that one out. And let's see what the virtual machines are doing. Okay, that booted right up into unRAID. Into Ubuntu. Appears to be working. Hakatosh is now Transcencia. Transcencia is now Hakatosh. These SSDs are going to be installed here. This is going to run Windows Hyper-V 2016 and will be my VM host essentially. And I'll do all sorts of game servers and all that stuff again because it seems to be on the rise. And this will serve all my stuff locally. So let's go ahead and add these SSDs in here, get Server 2016 installed, and I think we'll be pretty much done with this entire project as a whole. Actually, now that I have hard drive screws, I can install these SSDs into these drive caddies. And what's really cool is I finally have, or these screws actually sit flush with the caddy. So if you remember from really old videos, one of the problems I had is I couldn't slide these in here because they would catch and not be flush. And I actually think I'm having that problem right now. Okay, so take that back. This problem still exists for some reason, but it worked before. So maybe I'll just stick them in here in the middle where I don't have to really worry as much. Alright, so if I put them in the middle, they should slide right on and I shouldn't have any problems at all. Cool. So I'm just going to do that a couple more times, this time with the Intel 730s. So I am going to add in some 1 terabyte hard drives just for extra storage. No other reason really in particular for having these except for maybe backing up the virtual machines or something to that effect. So I almost forgot to do one more thing. I want to add a graphics card in here so I can have display out just in case I need it for any reason. And I also wanted to add a Intel 4 port NIC, and then that way I can give each virtual machine its own NIC, really because these things are piling up and I have no idea what to do with them. And there's also another 2-port NIC right here, also by Intel, that I'm just gonna let sit and do its thing. Alright, so we got those installed, so this should be pretty straightforward from here on out. I'll save you guys the operating system install, and we will jump right to probably the final product, unless I have some hiccups along the way. Let's go ahead and discuss why I ended up throwing everything out from the previous video and doing this video. So if you remember from that video, the previous one that is, this used to be Hakatosh, and this was the host for my unRAID Hakatosh virtual machine. And the performance was okay, the build was okay, and everything was okay. It was actually quite a lot of fun to do that and experiment with that, but as it turned out, the performance just wasn't really there. Now, Final Cut Pro did work out pretty well, and I was able to edit a video on it, but it just wasn't as good or even better than my 2013 MacBook Pro. So then I decided to give Adobe Pro a try because it was free, and so I did. And turns out that the 5960X in the side of the truncator did a really good job making 4K videos or editing 4K videos, whatever have you. And I kind of didn't want to buy a new MacBook Pro, especially since the one that I was looking at was about $2,000, if not more than that. And why buy a brand new MacBook Pro when mine is sort of working, at least enough for me to use it for daily tasks like browsing the internet, paying bills and such, when I could just use the truncator and all the horsepower it has to offer and graphics acceleration for rendering. And I did, and I liked it, and it worked out really well. So I'm editing this video in Adobe Pro right now. And that is kind of what changed all of the plans. So, Hakatosh is now Transcencia, which hosts unRAID, which hosts all of the services that I use here locally at home, like Plex, backing up my MacBook Pro and all its data, regular storage for movies, video games, my Steam repository, you name it, this server does it all. This used to be Transcencia and is now Hakatosh. It is now running Windows Server 2016 Data Center Edition and hosting several VMs like Space Engineers, Minecraft, etc. from previous videos. And that's its sole purpose. It has 192 gigabytes of RAM, and I don't want to underutilize this server, which is the reason why I wanted to swap roles. This could do all of the home stuff quite easily with its 2670 V1s, and this could do all the virtual machine stuff with its 2690 V1s really well. And because it has 192 gigabytes of RAM on it, and really powerful CPUs, it really only makes sense that this one hosts all my virtual machines that reach out to the outside world versus exposing my unRAID server. Now with that, you might see the addition of the Netgear switch, and this is a dumb switch. So this is making a reappearance because now this server is on its own VLAN, and this server is also on its own VLAN. I was a little lazy and didn't want to configure dual VLANs on my Ubiquiti switch because I'm lazy, and it was a lot easier just to pop in the Netgear switch and have that take over. And yeah, it's not as cool as using, enterprise equipment to run VMs on or whatever, but it gets the job done, and it's pretty simple. It was easy for me to do, so I did it. After all, this is an experimentation lab, not an enterprise lab, so you kind of get what you get. Alright, so that's the end of this video, and I really appreciate you watching, and I appreciate everyone answering each other's questions within some of the other videos I have. And I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.